Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the What's Really Going On podcast, your favorite podcast where we discuss the intersection of politics and culture. Before we introduce our special guest, be sure to follow us on all of our social media accounts at WRGO Pod. That includes Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. Be sure to like, listen, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube, where you can watch our special videos, including Henry on the Beltline doing some mental health check-ins with his fellow AT aliens. Like I said, we have a very, very special guest today. We are honored to have Jason Esteves on. He is an attorney, educator, and public servant who built his career around spanning educational opportunity and economic mobility. He is a proud graduate of Brown University and the Georgetown University Law Center. He first entered public service through the Atlanta Public School Board of Education, where he became the board's youngest chair and focused on improving student outcomes, increasing graduation rates, and strengthening the district's educational outcomes. Estevez later represented parts of Atlanta in the Georgia State Senate, where he championed legislation on public education, voting rights, healthcare access, and economic development. He is a recent candidate for the Georgia gubernatorial race, but he was unsuccessful, but is still recognized today as one of the new generation of Democrats who are leading in Georgia. Mr. Estevez, sir, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to the conversation.
Of course, I mean, we can just get right into it. So before you became a legislator, you were, like we said, you were a lawyer, an education advocate, and served on the Atlanta Public School Board. Looking back, what was one of the first things that convinced you not to go into the private sector, like many of your probably of your classmates at Georgetown went into, but actually into the public sector, not to focus on, laws in Congress, but actually on school board? Was there something that said that, hey, this is the thing that I can make a really big difference in my community?
Yeah, so I'm somewhat unique in that I did go into the private sector. I just had a parallel career. I was in the private sector and at the same time in the public sector. So what really changed my life was my teaching experience. I taught seventh and eighth grade social studies right out of college. I went to the University of Miami, and um, and after college, taught 150 middle schoolers, and that is by far the hardest job that I've ever done. It's the craziest thing that I've ever done, but it's also the most meaningful and most impactful job that I've ever had because I was teaching 150 kids who look like us and trying to give them better opportunities and a better educational outcome. So I worked my tail off, and what I found was that they were not getting the same opportunities as other folks simply because of where they lived. And that motivated me to ultimately go to law school to change the system and to make public policy, to create public policy that would level the playing field for people like my students. And that's what motivated me to go to law school. It's ultimately what motivated me to run for school board and what drove my run for state senate and ultimately governor. So all of that ties back to my time in the classroom. And no, I have to correct you on one thing. I did not go to Georgetown. I went
I've
to
been made aware of
Emory.
that.
Yeah,
Don't
I
worry.
went to Emory Law School. I went to
My
Emory Law
apologies.
School.
My
Yeah, no, it's
apologies.
all good. I don't,
Keeping it in Georgia, I see. My
yeah. So I went to Emory Law School, and while at Emory, I got very involved um, in community service and nonprofits because that's what motivated me and kept me fired up, and that ultimately is what got me to where I am today.
Yeah, as the son of a District of Columbia public school teacher, I certainly understand a lot of that perspective. So can you talk about especially the importance of school board? It's a really underappreciated and forgotten aspect of politics. Can you actually, one, explain, what a school board does, especially because it's kind of really politicized now, but no one actually knows why. Can you actually
Yeah,
explain like what school boards do and why it's so important, especially now?
yeah. So I start by saying what school board is not. The school board does not manage the day-to-day operations of a school district. That is the job of a superintendent. And in most places, the school board, and especially in Atlanta, the school board hires the superintendent. But the superintendent is the one that hires and fires and principals, teachers, all the things. So that is the superintendent. What the school board does, though, is that it does set a budget for the school system. So in Atlanta Public School, that's over $1 billion that the school system is managing, and the school board sets that budget. The school board also adopts policy for the school system and ultimately sets the direction and the priorities for the school system. So, from a high level, the school board is a very important body. And when you think about the different levels of government, I always tell people that local government is where you feel the day-to-day impact of decisions, and the school board is no different. If your school is not well funded, is if it's having issues with turnover and keeping stable leadership, if it's doing a great job in that it's focusing on literacy or focusing on parental engagement, oftentimes the school board is helping to drive that and support teachers and principals. So school boards are very important. And I joined the school board at a time when Atlanta was going through a crisis because of the Atlanta cheating scandal that happened in the early 2000s, and where principals, teachers, and even the superintendent wound up in jail and charged because of it. So when I joined the school board, I was a part of the school board that was tasked with essentially hitting the restart button and putting the school system back on track.
I'm glad you kind of put some Atlanta history there because I'm a Georgia native and I migrated to Atlanta and we're in a very transitional phase here again in Georgia. And as mentioned in our introduction, you recently ran for governor, but unfortunately didn't receive the party's like nomination. What inspired you to initially run for statewide office, and what were your priorities?
Yeah, so I'm proud of the race that we ran. Of course, I'm disappointed that we didn't win, but I look forward to supporting former Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms and ensuring that she becomes governor of the state in November. And I ran because I knew that people wanted a new generation of leadership. Unfortunately, not enough people wanted a new generation of leadership, but there were certainly a lot of people that wanted a new generation of leadership. And I saw all over the state that people were struggling. They're struggling with the economy. They're struggling with the lack of opportunity. They're struggling with the lack of healthcare. And people at this point need someone who can solve the problems that they face each and every day. And I see those issues on a day-to-day basis because I'm a small business owner. My wife and I own an urgent care, so we see a lot of the healthcare issues. And we own two restaurants. We own the Flying Biscuit Cafe, one in Columbus and one in Macon, Georgia. And those are breakfast and brunch spots. So I see my employees having to work two jobs or two or three jobs sometimes just to make ends meet. I see the customers spending less money because they have less money to spend. And then I see my own costs as a small business owner. The food costs, the staff costs have all gone up, and it's rough out here. And the same old politics has failed us, and it's time for a change. So my campaign was laser focused on tackling the issues that people are concerned about each and every day: housing, healthcare, education, making sure that we're supporting small businesses and entrepreneurism so we could build wealth in our communities. My campaign was very much about helping to level the playing field and give people the opportunities that they're looking for so that your zip code doesn't determine your success, your work ethic does.
Look, I'm glad you're speaking about it. I voted for you, by the way.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you.
Um, but we know that like a lot of people they check out when it's not, oh, my favorite person, especially here in Georgia where we have just a lot of transitional like new people are here in the especially in Atlanta. We think Atlanta controls it all, but a lot of people aren't focused on that rural area. Um, Again, as a Georgia native, what would you say to voters who maybe is checked out? They were supporting you. or supporting other candidates, but we now have a front runner and we understand the priorities of Georgia. What would you say to those people?
Yeah, I would say a couple things. First and foremost, this is not about any one person. It's about making sure that someone who believes in the need to expand access to Medicaid, someone who believes in the need for the state to invest in affordable housing, someone who believes in the need to expand access to universal child care and early learning. It's important that whoever we have, that person believe in those things. And the reality is that Rick Jackson, the Republican nominee for governor, does not believe in those things. Keisha Lance Bottoms does. So for me, if you want those things that I talked about, affordable housing, expanding access to healthcare, universal child care, making sure that you have a state government that puts people ahead of corporations and politicians, then you should be voting for Keisha Lance Bottoms. Do we agree on every single thing? Absolutely not. But I learned a long time ago that it is better to have someone on your team in office than to have someone on the other team in office. And what we see on the other side is that when Republicans don't get who they want, they all coalesce and they all unify and they vote that person in. It's time for Democrats to understand that if we want power to change the circumstances, to change the system, then we need to be electing Democrats and then holding those Democrats accountable once they get into office.
I'm so happy you kind of drilled down on that because literally last night I was at dinner and I turned to a friend. I asked them, are they registered? Am I voting? They said they believe in God, all this thing. And I'm trying to get them to like, hey, pay attention. And they were like, well, can't they get in there and do what they want to do anyway? And to what you just said, holding them accountable. And especially with like Rick Jackson and what we know Republicans do, they kind of finesse the importance of this race. Can you kind of maybe drill down just a little bit of how and why we need to hold our elected officials accountable when they get in office and not just kind of, let them do whatever?
Yeah, well, look, I think in Georgia we do a pretty good job of voting. We tend to have a high voter registration rate and people turn out. What we don't do as well, especially as Democrats, is hold people accountable. And if your friend, if someone who's watching is upset and bothered by the fact that we've lost a lot of affordable housing in Metro Atlanta, in Georgia, then they should be looking at their city council. They should be looking at the governor. They should be looking at the county commission. If someone who's watching is upset about the fact that their community does not have a high quality public school, then they should be looking at the school board and they should be looking at the governor and asking questions about why their tax dollars are not being used to improve the services and needs that exist in the community. And the only way to do that is one, by voting folks in who align with you, and two, by making sure that you show up and that if necessary, that you check them, that you let them know, hey, we are watching you. And don't take that lesson from me. They don't even have to listen to y'all. Just look at what people with money do. Because when you think about the billionaires, they're holding those elected officials accountable. That's why these elected officials oftentimes listen to the billionaires and to the special interests versus listening to the people. Because those billionaires are actually not only funding elections, but they're actually showing up and if you don't fulfill your promises, if you don't do what they ask you to do, you're out and they'll support someone else. We can do the same thing, and our voice is actually more powerful because we outnumber the billionaires. We outnumber the special interests. So if we actually come together, if we vote in blocks, especially young people, I tell people this all the time. We're all relatively young. Y'all are younger than I am, but I still consider myself to be relatively young. But I'll tell you this when you look at the voting data, um, only about 25-30% of the electorate are people under the age of 45. It might actually be 50. Like think about how crazy that is that young people are not represented in our electorate. So when you hear people complain about politicians being too old, well, look at the people who are actually going out and voting. Oftentimes they're old. So if we're trying to change the politicians, the decision makers, and change the system, then we have to do a much better job of engaging, voting, and then ultimately holding people accountable. And the last thing that I'll say, Henry, is that if our vote did not matter, then Donald Trump wouldn't be working so damn hard to try to take it away.
I'm actually glad that you brought that up because can you talk a little bit about how the right to vote is really actively being held under attack, especially in Georgia?
It is is under attack, and what Trump did was he used the FBI to raid the Fulton County election office to steal ballots. I'm gonna say steal because they got a legal subpoena, but at the end of the day, Trump is still litigating the 2020 election. He's still fighting over the 2020 election. So they took tens of thousands of ballots, and they're trying to right now look through those ballots to try to find anything that supports their conspiracy theories so that ultimately, when we win in November, Trump can come back and say, ah, something was wrong. They cheated. And here's evidence. And we all know it's going to be BS. But what he's done is he's weaponizing law enforcement that in some cases was already weaponized, right? And he's doing it to call into question our democracy and our right to vote. So we see that coming from the federal level here in Georgia, but we also see that coming from state Republican leaders too, because they are consistently trying to change the rules. For some of you who voted in 2020, you may have been able to get a absentee ballot and then drop it off in a box, and that vote count. Republicans changed the rules to make it so where you couldn't drop it off in that box and make it as easy to get an absentee ballot. They are actively trying to make it harder to vote, not just with absentee ballots, but also early voting locations and precincts. People have to drive a lot further to exercise their right, and that is intentional decision making by people in power who are trying to make sure that they choose who gets to elect them instead of allowing voters to elect their leaders.
And speaking of absentee vote, because I live in New York, Noah lives in Maryland, and especially in places like the DMV and New York, of course, there's a lot of transplants. So a lot of people are voting from home or like trying to travel to get home and vote. So can you really talk about for Georgia specifically, what is the biggest misconception for people who aren't necessarily from Georgia, but also are realizing that Georgia over the past few years has been coming like more and more of a focus when it comes to elections. So like any big misconceptions?
Yeah, I think the biggest misconception is that Georgia is a red state. And what I tell folks is, look, just because we have a Republican governor and Republican statewide elected officials and a Republican legislature, when you look at what's happening in the state, we have two Democratic U.S. senators. We have a metro area that is elect that where the five counties that make up Metro Atlanta are all led by black women, Democrats, right? The mayor of Atlanta, a Democrat. All of our major cities, most of our major cities in Georgia are led by Democrats. The state is rapidly changing. And in fact, the US Census just came out with some updated numbers that show that Georgia is now a minority majority state. People of color are the majority in Georgia. So the misconception is that our vote doesn't matter because it's a Republican state. And the reality is, if we actually came out and voted, we'd be able to take over this thing and have people who are in office who look like us, who represent us, who are looking out for us. But it's about voting and it's about making sure that we're holding people accountable and stopping Republicans from trying to rig the system because they know that if we show up, we actually win.
Yeah, and I can take the next bit of questions. I think one thing that we're thinking about is obviously to follow up on what Mackenzie said. There's an ongoing focus in terms of, Democrats more broadly, especially with everything that's happened in Maine. Where should the party focus? It's a question that we have been thinking about for months and now almost years. What lessons do you think that Georgia provides in terms of how people actually should be engaging voters, and that like you all have a black population that's both in the city and in rural areas, and
Yeah.
there are a lot of places where those constituencies meet, and I'm sure as you've learned on the campaign trail for governor, there's places where they don't meet.
Yeah.
And you have to talk to a bunch of people in a bunch of different ways while being consistent in that. What lessons do you think that Georgia kind of can give people nationally, and that like, hey, here's actually how you talk to a broad coalition, but mainly the core of the party, which looks like the four people on these screens right now?
Yeah. Look, I think that what we are missing, the establishment is missing, is the laser focus on working families. Um, People are struggling all over the state, all over this country. And when I say people, oftentimes uh, politicos start to immediately think about those living in poverty, right? But when I say working families, when I say people are struggling, I'm talking about people in poverty and the middle class and
Mhm.
some of the folks who are earning pretty good money, right? It's like 80% of the country is feeling a pinch right now.
Mhm.
And when you have an economy where 20% is driving economic growth, that's bad math, right? Because that means there's a whole bunch of people who are not participating and can't participate because they're busting their ass. They're working full time and can barely be able to pay for childcare, gas, healthcare, and food and housing, right? So, what we should be doing as a party, and what I hear that's happening in states all across this country where a new generation is winning, is that those candidates are focusing in on working families and providing real solutions to the issues that people are facing each and every day. One of the reasons why universal childcare was so high on my list as a priority was because I know that universal childcare
Yeah.
helps with the education crisis that we have around too many of our babies not being able to read. But I also know, as someone who has two kids, a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old, that childcare is expensive as hell.
Yeah.
And with two kids, we could barely afford it. So, how can I make sure that people are able to go to work and at the same time ensure that their children are receiving the building blocks that they need so that they can read, write, and do math and do well in school? Right? It's a win-win. And if we start focusing in on that, just common sense issues, not chasing what Republicans are trying to talk to us about, not chasing what a lot of donors want us to talk about on the Democratic side, but just being laser focused on the people. And I think New York is a perfect example of where Mayor Mamdani focused on real issues. I mean, he was talking about free buses, and to us in Georgia, we were like, free buses? What you talking about? But in New York, that's a big issue. He was talking about MTA running on time. Shoot,
Mhm.
and Henry knows this. MARTA, we
Marta, oh my
we need to
Lord.
help out with that, right?
You will be
I
lucky.
literally love my mayor so much. I feel like even if you don't agree with what he said or whatever, if he ran, because I definitely always I do listen to what the other side has to say. He is really following on his word, and like the things that he's done in the short time that he's been there, like the childcare, like that really before reporting in the news, and even especially coming off of the pandemic, working from home, then coming back to work. I don't have children, but I work with a lot of women. That really changed my outlook on what childcare really provides for people and what it takes away from people as well. So him being able to do that in the short time that he's been there, it's been incredible, literally.
It's it's an economic issue, childcare is, Mackenzie, and you're absolutely right. But here's ultimately what I see Mamdani doing, but I also think that Democrats need to be focused on. All the things he's talking about are actually about empowering you to provide for yourself economically, right? making sure that buses run on time. Why is that important? Because you need to get to work. People call in to my restaurant, call out from work in my restaurant all the time because they missed the bus or the transportation, their Uber didn't show up. Like I get that all the time. People who are making $18 an hour who ride Uber back and forth to work, which means a big chunk of their check is already going to transportation, right? And I'm not talking about Atlanta. I'm talking about in Macon and Columbus. So these are cities that don't necessarily have the robust transportation or a more robust transportation system. So my goal, and when I see other people who are doing it right, what they're doing is they're actually speaking to issues that people care about so that they can actually empower themselves to put money in their own pockets to grow their wealth. Healthcare, you need to be healthy so you can actually go to work. Education, you need that knowledge and sense to make sure that you can get a good job or start your own business. I talked about small business loans and ownership so that you can own more than just homes. That's about building wealth. So all these things tie back to, at the end of the day, what people care most about, being able to have the resources so that they can lead a good life. That's what people want for themselves and their families, to just have a good life. And for too many people right now, they're working their butts off and they feel like they don't have a good life. And it's true.
Yeah, and I think the thing I'm always struck, at least by Mackenzie, who I think has been singing Mob Donnie's praises ever since I think the middle of last year. And I think I live in Maryland, but I'm right next to DC, which we are going to have a new mayor who's really, I think, going to run behind Mom Donnie on a lot of stuff. And I think there is a through line in that it does seem like there's a lot of obviously energy behind candidates who are increasingly not white, increasingly women, diverse candidates who are coming up. Can you at least speak to how and I think you've said a lot in terms of the way that you're communicating, how you're at least understanding a lot of these problems is in some part generational, and that a problem with I think a lot of these problems that we're trying to tackle is that it's people who are trying to understand the three of us who are in our early 30s, but it's someone who's making the decisions who's in their 70s. And for them, what the middle class look like is very different than what it looks like for us. All of us have, employment and we're all college, graduates, and we have a lot of people who are like the same, but there's a different struggle that is, I think, where everyone feels like they're one missed paycheck away from going really south. Can
Yeah.
you at least talk about your interactions, especially with people who are in your generation, people who are, in the generation coming, in terms of what are those engagements like? Where I think for most people, they're not used to seeing someone who's like you with your experience actually engage with them in politics. Can you really share with our audience a little bit about like what those actual conversations are like? Because I'm sure they're a lot different than what I think people think they would look like traditionally.
Yeah, well, look, people are used to their politicians being out of touch. They're used to their politicians not understanding what a normal day looks like for the average person. They're used to their politicians talking about childcare as if it was a 20-year ago thing.
And not
Home
something that costs like thousands of dollars a month.
Right. Look, I had some of my colleagues in the legislature when I said that I was paying at the time was paying $1,500
Hmm.
a month per child for
Yeah.
childcare. They were like, "What?" And I'm like, "How do you not know that? That's like I'm not special."
That was
That is
literally me. I was like, what? Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
Like I think
That's good.
it's so important that we have elected officials who have lived experiences for the right now, not for the past, but for right now. And the people who are struggling the most, the people um, who are tired of the system that has continuously failed us for generations. Not it is not a new thing, but for a long time, are those who are younger, the Gen X, millennials, Gen Z. We're all feeling it. And Gen Z has had it, to me, the
Hmm.
worst. Millennials have had it bad. Gen but Gen Z or Gen X has had it bad. Millennials have had it bad. But Gen Z to me is in a bad way because they are when you come to housing, I mean, it's so far away from the reality of being able to own your own home today, where you have to be around 40 years old and make over $100,000 a year to be able to own a home in Georgia, anywhere in the state. Like that's crazy. It wasn't like that back in the day when I was growing up. I sound old. I sound old saying that. Back in the day, if you said that you made $100,000, that was like you made it.
You're
Like
done.
there's nothing else for you to do. But now 100,000 is like the minimum. That's nothing.
Especially with things like AI and who knows how that's going to impact, especially to your point, that Gen Z, Gen Alpha, we don't
That,
know.
that's right. Well, and that's why it's important that when it comes to this income inequality, when it comes to the lack of economic opportunity that we're seeing in our community, whether it's housing, whether it's with education, jobs, small business ownership, we have to level the playing field now because in 10 years we don't know what the world's going to look like with AI. And if this thing continues to do this, like you just pointed out, Noah, it's going to be a big problem for our society, for our democracy, for our world. We've seen revolutions happen, and I'm not saying I'm not,
My
you
head
know,
was going there.
I'm the whole top of the podcast. I'm with you. I tell
yeah.
my sister, my family every day. It's war, baby, and I feel it on the. I feel it.
I am so I won't say I'm a student of history, but I like history, and I'm in this fellowship. It's called the Civil Society Fellowship. It's an Aspen Institute um, fellowship, and they bring Democrats and people from nonprofits. It's not just politics. In fact, I'm one of the only politicians in the class, but we study like historic or yeah, historic writings and books and some more contemporary pieces and just have a discussion about how that fits into building a civil society. And when you read some of the Greek and Roman writings, they had income inequality back then too. And those governments were toppled. Not not through elections, but through force, right? So what I'm concerned about is how do we make sure that um, we address the issues that are blatantly out there to prevent some kind of revolution that none of us want to see, right? And I know that there are leaders across the state, across the country, around the world who are concerned about that very thing. But the current structure where you have the rich getting richer and everyone else being left behind, and you have a political system that has basically codified that, solidified that, it's not sustainable. It has to change.
You're in the leader of it all. Trump has kind of set this precedent of like and focus on DC. But as you
The king of corruption. The king of corruption. Look, he has made billions of dollars while he's been in office, has openly admitted to it. He has done more trading. We've seen how they've talked about Nancy Pelosi making money on trades. And Donald Trump, in the last year and a half, has done way more trades than Nancy Pelosi has.
talk
Like
about it.
it's crazy. And then his kids are investing in companies that within a week or a month later get a government contract from the United States of America. That's crazy. That's open corruption. Open corruption. I can tell you what, if we did that, we'd be we'd be
Under
somewhere
the jail, under the jail, under the jail.
else.
And I'm glad you broke it down just like that because Rick Jackson planned on doing the same thing with his folks when he tried to get this election in Georgia. So, can you really speak to young voters, any listeners, on why local elections, i.e., this governorship in Georgia, but other elections, just local elections in general, are important?
Yeah, look, I think that when you look outside of your home and you see the transportation options, when you look at your schools, when you look at the opportunity to start your own business, and I want to focus on that for a little bit because home ownership, I mean, small business ownership is so important for me because I'm all about building wealth, and the two top ways to build your own wealth is home ownership and small business ownership. And too many Black folks don't get the opportunity to own either one, but especially small businesses, right? So if we talk about owning the block means owning the house on the block and the small business on the block. So if you care about making sure that the little guy, that people who look like me or you, the woman, the immigrant, whoever is on your mind, if you want to make sure that there's a level playing field, that we have opportunities to thrive based on hard work, not handouts. Just give me the opportunity. Then we have to make sure that we elect people who believe that in their core at every single level of government, not just for president, not just to Congress, but for your city council, for your school board, for your county commission, for the governor, for the state rep, for the state senator. Because at the end of the day, all those people are receiving your tax dollars and impact what actually happens to you, your family, and to your community. And look, just pay attention to what's happening at a city council meeting or what's happening at a school board meeting, and you will see how much money is being distributed out there. And this is the last thing that I'll say, Henry, on this is that the state of Georgia's budget is $39 billion. $39 billion.
And the minimum wage is what?
Exactly. 515. 515 in Georgia. In Georgia, yeah, no,
Y'all
in
see they
Georgia,
face? That's where I'm going back up to the
yeah,
Northeast.
in Georgia, the legal minimum wage is 515, but everybody follows the federal minimum wage, which is 725. But if we didn't have the federal minimum wage, it'd be 515. And by the way, 725, no one can live on that either, right? So that needs to increase significantly. But that's a whole different thing. But we have a $39 billion budget, right? Billions of dollars are distributed to contractors like Rick Jackson Henry, are distributed to organizations that are doing work in the community. And right now in the state of Georgia, Republicans are making those decisions on where that money is going. If we want to make sure that that money goes to organizations that care for our families, care for our communities, then we have to change the leadership. We have to make sure that we elect people like Keisha Lance Bottoms to governor, that we elect Democrats to the state legislature, and that we have a city council and a school board and mayors and county commissioners that believe in what we believe. Because other than that, those billions of dollars are going to go into the pockets of the people that can care less about whether we can afford to go to work.
Look, man, I'm just glad you broke it down that simple. And I can assume, but we like to close out with a little rapid fire here. And just to start off, could you tell us your favorite restaurant in Atlanta?
Oh, my favorite restaurant in Atlanta. I feel like it changes from time to time.
Talk about that too.
So we like barbecue. My wife and I like barbecue. So um,
Don't have us get you beat up now.
yeah, I know. I'm trying.
You're thinking. I can see you thinking.
Yeah. I'm thinking. So look, we like Fox Brothers. That's a good barbecue spot. For pizza, Antico's Pizza is close to the house. And then I have to say Flying Biscuit. That we own two Flying Biscuits.
I
So that's
thought that's
breakfast.
what you was going to say. That's why I
Yeah,
said I can
yeah.
only
So
assume.
but so I would say those three restaurants we frequent a lot.
That's good. I eat at Flying Biscuit, so that's good to know. What would be your Mount Rushmore of Atlanta music artists?
Mm. Got to put Outkast in there. Um, Ludacris.
So that's three people right there now.
Yeah. And I feel like we got to put somebody new. Um, yeah, I really like Lil Baby.
Okay, I won't argue with that one.
And here's the thing, Harry. I really do like Future and like 21 Savage, but we can't put them on Mount Rushmore yet.
Okay, I would say someone from my generation will argue Future over Lil Baby because Future or Young Thug because like the leaders of the culture type of conversation, he
Yeah.
influenced Lil Baby. You know how it go.
I'm gonna sound like an old man here, but with Young Thug, I can't understand half of the stuff he's saying, man. It's like yeah. I'm like, what are you saying? What are you saying? At least Lil Baby articulates when he's rapping, and Future I love, but Future.
I feel the same way, brother.
I must
What's
say,
the
no
one?
Usher is crazy. No Usher is crazy.
We
Well,
I did say music is not
Usher
right,
ain't music.
but no, it's Atlanta. Stay up
I,
there.
He's from Atlanta.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
it
He
stay up
so
there.
so I immediately went to rap.
Yeah, I'm
That's
about to
why
say.
I immediately went to rap. We have our share of R&B artists,
Yeah, Tony Braxton. Yeah, you got it.
and yeah, but I immediately went to rap. My wife loves Usher. I mean, Usher is one, two, three, and four on Mount Rushmore.
That's so believable. What's one book you'd recommend every high schooler in Georgia read right now?
Oh, I have not been reading the last couple of years.
You've been
So
busy in your defense.
yeah. So I'll tell you this. There are two things. Um, they're two totally different books. One is Dreams of My Father, Barack Obama. Love that book. It resonated with me so much. Just his his childhood, um his struggles with his dad and his mom and trying to meet expectations. His book, I thought Barack Obama's book was very impactful for me. So I would say that just from a biographical uh, nature from the my favorite president of the United States, Barack Obama. Uh, but I'd also say The Art of War. The Art of War is a good book because it talks about strategy. And I think that whether it's your job, whether you're in college, whether it's whatever you're in, you need to know how to interact with people. And you gotta take care of yourself and watch your back. And I think the Art of War helps you strategize around that.
I won't disagree. I like both of those suggestions. To wrap it up here, the future of Georgia depends on like finish the sentence.
You,
Me
you,
or people listening.
you. Whatever you define as you. It really does, man. There is we have, as I told Mackenzie, we have the opportunity, given where Georgia is, to really change the game and and rebuild a system and systems that have failed us for and it's failed our communities for far too long. I'm concerned that if we elect the same old thing this year, it's going to be a lot worse. We've already seen what Donald Trump has done in his second term. I believe that if we elect Rick Jackson and folks who are aligned with him to offices in this state, that we're going to be going back. We're going to be going backwards. We're not going forward. And I don't know about y'all, but I want to move forward. I ain't trying to go back.
I will be moving out of Georgia. Um, Noah, go ahead and take us home, buddy.
Well, Mr. Estevez, this was a amazing conversation. We appreciate your time, your service. We know that being in your positions, it is a choice to serve your community. So we thank you for that. Please tell our listeners and our audience where they can follow you, your restaurants, whatever stuff that you are doing, how people can be connected with you, whatever you do next. So the floor is yours, just for say, where people can follow you, how they can get in connected with you, restaurants to check out like yours. So the floor is yours, sir, to drop whatever you want to drop.
Yeah, look, what I would tell you is you could follow me on social media at Jason Esteves on X and Instagram. My TikTok, uh, Jason for Georgia. If you search Jason Estevez, you'll find me on TikTok. But follow me on social media. And at the end of the day, what I want to make sure people take away from this conversation is that our power is our vote, and we have to make sure that we exercise that power. And at the same time, we have to hold people accountable. The status quo is no longer working, and the only way we change it is by voting and holding those people accountable, whether they're Democrat, Republican, Independent, it doesn't matter. We need to make sure that we show up in these spaces so that they know that we're watching.
Well, Mr. Esworth, we will certainly be watching and we appreciate you and we look forward to holding people accountable together with you as we are sure that this will not be the last time you join us. So thank you so much.